The mind made me is the doer. The mind, what's the mind? It's the part of us that we think of as being the part that can deal with words, can deal with numbers, theories, philosophies, colors, textures, physical things and abstractions, which are like, again, theoreticals. The mind is good at examining the past. The mind is good at looking for patterns, things that are unusual, anomalies. The mind is good at predicting the future. Can the mind predict the future 100% of the time, all the time, perfect? No. How about computers? Well, even today with very impressive computers that try to predict the weather, sometimes they get it wrong. So, we said, what is the mind? That's the mind. What is the mind made me? Generally speaking, the mind considers it to be housed in the brain and the spinal column. And the mind is really one with the physical body. So, for the mind to say me, generally speaking, they mean my body. The mind got an idea, well, it thunk it up. So many neurons in your brain running brain programs that we don't even understand come up with some idea that created a better mousetrap. And then, I became a millionaire because I sold this idea to some company, and the company made the better mousetrap and sold lots of them. It was my idea because it came into my mind, and it was my brain, and I keep my body in tip-top shape. I eat Cheetos every night, and I drink a quart of whiskey every weekend. But still, occasionally I run to the bathroom when I get diarrhea. But I had that idea, so I'm the one who deserves the millions of dollars. The mind made me. If there is no such thing as a mind made me, what would that look like? Maybe this tree. We look at a tree and we say, that's a tree. Does it have a consciousness? Most people would say no. It seems to have certain built-in things that happen. In the spring it sprouts leaves, and the water goes up the trunk and into the leaves, and photosynthesis gets done, but it's the energy of the sun. It's really nothing to do with the tree. But somehow it's all programmed into the DNA. Oh, it's the DNA of the tree, how to manufacture these little photosynthesis factories in the leaves. And then the sugar gets produced and gets stored in various parts of the tree. But, the tree really doesn't have a mind. I mean, if you talk to a tree, would a tree say, hey, I'm Joe Tree? We don't really think that the trees have consciousness. And if they do, and there is quite a bit of research on this that says that trees do indeed have consciousness. What? The Secret Life of Plants is an old book. You can look that one up. But yes, there's lots of studies that say that trees have got consciousness. Believe it or not. Do trees have the same kind of consciousness as humans? Humans would say, no, we are the smartest things that there are. The strange thing is a book, a 1902 book by Maurice Bucke, who was a psychiatrist in Ontario, Canada. And he wrote a book called Cosmic Consciousness. And in the book, he said, certain people through history, exceptional people, had a new form of consciousness, completely separate from their old human consciousness, added to them. And he called it cosmic consciousness. So in other words, these men, they were pretty much men in his book. I don't know if there was an example of females. But remember, in 1902, that was before women even had the vote. Women were not considered to be equal to men. And I think it's reflected in Maurice Bucke's book. I think he was a bit of a chauvinist back in those days. Just because he didn't include women. But, I mean, it was 1902 and I wouldn't expect anything more. But, he said basically that these people, and there weren't very many of them in his book, had another kind of consciousness added to them. And he posited that, a dog has a certain form of consciousness, but it doesn't have the equivalent consciousness to a human. Something unique about humans. And then these supermen that he detailed in his book had this additional consciousness added to them. Completely different kind of consciousness, cosmic consciousness. Did their brains create cosmic consciousness? They had the same brain as everybody else. They didn't say that Maurice Bucke didn't say that cosmic consciousness ran in families. No, he said it was basically people generally of good moral character. Oh, so going to church did this? Millions of people went to church. So, no, you wouldn't be able to say that as a generality. Millions of people who went to church and had good moral character but didn't develop cosmic consciousness. But did those people say, my mind created this cosmic consciousness? Most of these people called it God, or some other variety like that. They basically said it was, God joined them. So, I mean, if consciousness that they call God can be added to human consciousness, what does that make human consciousness? If I was me And then all of a sudden another consciousness joined me, and it sure felt like God. Where does my me end and the new God consciousness begin? I don't know. It just gets very muddy. But the idea that somehow your mind has created a me because it's in ignorance. It doesn't understand. It never read Richard Maurice Buck, Cosmic Consciousness. Never read most of the books in the public library. And yet it says, the ideas that come to me are mine. And, that's why I deserve all the money for the business I created. Where do the ideas come from? Well, as I said before, the mind made me says, well, it was just my wonderful neurons that I was born with. They grew into this marvelous great brain, and it just comes up with great ideas. How am I ever going to prove to you that the brain is more like a radio that tunes into frequencies than a generator of original thoughts? We don't really have the research available to do it. David Wilcock says that's the way it is, and we access source fields. Rupert Sheldrake says that there are morphogenic fields that are accessed in order to create the form of a human or a dog or a dragonfly. How do we access consciousness fields? I want to boost my consciousness field, my morphogenic field, because I don't feel like my body's perfect. It aches a lot. It's aged. If I could get back to the original blueprints of this body and get them into my morphogenic field, I should be able to produce a perfect Vitruvian man model of a body for me to use. Vitruvian man is one of my lectures last week. I showed a picture of it. Leonardo da Vinci's drawing of the perfect human, according to the golden mean, which is another thing you can look up. The relative sizes of your nose to your ears to your eyes to your arms, etc. But the mind that grew from a little infant's mind doesn't usually say, I created my body. But it sure created those ideas that came about once it, became an adult and got out on its own. But if it's true that the infant didn't create its body, nature did it. It was nature, the DNA that did it. Well, you couldn't have had these great ideas that you claim are yours, if nature hadn't made you in a human form with a human brain. So you're taking a lot of credit that really belongs to nature. But it's still my idea. I at some point gained ownership of this body. It's my body. It was my idea. Came to my head and I wrote it down. I went to the patent office and patented it in my name. There's too many holes in this theory that your mind did all these things on its own. That's why we call it ego mind. Ego mind is a very stupid thing. It's a mind-made me. And it claims ownership and doership of everything. And this is the way most humans look at it, because they were there to witness the body doing all the things that, like getting the ideas and writing them down and organizing a corporation that went to the business of manufacturing whatever it was, my idea, and managing all the other people. I did all that. So, I'm the doer. I did it all. And now I'm rich. Somewhere along the line, there's a flaw in this ego. This ego is taking credit for its own creation as a human, and it takes a lot of creation to create, this world here. In other words, well, sure, I was born into an ongoing planet. It was full of billions of people that built all the infrastructure, all the roads. And, my factory had to have roads to deliver the raw materials that came from the other side of the planet, that were processed by other humans. But in the end, that's capitalism. I bought the stuff. I paid taxes on it. We processed it. We made something out of it. Now it becomes we, because I had a bunch of people working with me, for me. But in the end, it was my idea. And, I'm the CEO of the whole thing. That's why I get paid the most money. How am I going to ever explain this to someone who is filthy rich? They're never going to listen to this video. They're never going to get interested in the workings of their mind, because they're too busy. The accountant's called, they got to review the bottom line. The accountant's calling for firing a bunch of people because somewhere along the line in business school it said, every year you should fire 10% of your workforce. Rule of thumb. Which ones? It doesn't matter. I need 10%. Get rid of them. What if they're doing a bang-up job and we had massive... Doesn't matter. The rule of thumb is you got to get rid of 10%. Just cut. Put everyone's name on a wall and throw darts. Throw 10 darts, and those 10 people that you hit, those 10 names you hit with darts, those ones are the ones that got to go. There are so many stupid things that people use as rules of thumb for productivity. Because the mind does not know truth from falsehood. It can use logic to a certain degree, and it can create a mind-made me. And the doership, the advanced spiritual students are always taught, you're not the doer, you're the silent witness of the body and the mind going about doing its own thing. How are you ever going to find out if that's a truth in your own life? Well, you're going to have to get really stoned on marijuana, lie down on the couch, the end of the lecture is as follows. I cannot prove it to you. I can give you all this information for your mind to ponder. How are you going to find out if it's true? You are going to have to investigate it yourself. If you don't want to, you will never know. Or maybe something will happen. Things will change for you.